The 20th of June 1995. Claire, where were you born?
I was born in Newcastle, Hamilton,
Right. And what year was that?
1906.
And when did you come down here to Newtown?
We came to Newtown, I couldn't tell you the date, but we left Dubbo on the 15th of June 1912, and about 6 weeks after that we came here. We came to 12 Fitzroy Street.
Were your parents moving around or...?
No, my father was a railway worker.
Oh, right. And what brought them to Newtown? Why did they decide to settle in Newtown?
Well, my father was a railway worker and it was close to his work.
Right. And how many children were in your family?
5. 2 sisters and 2 brothers.
And where were you?
I was the second.
Right.
My brother was the oldest.
And what are your earliest memories of Newtown?
Earliest memories of Newtown. Well, it isn't like it is now. We lived up in 12 Fitzroy Street. There were houses opposite, a narrow street. And we were a very happy family. I had a little sister born when we were just after we came to Newtown. And I had a friend who lived opposite. Of course, I don't know what they moved away. And then I had another friend in those 2 years living in 14 Fitzroy Street. Her mother died and she had an elder sister, and they went over to number 1, what is now Warrenball Avenue. And there was a little summer house in the side where the people have put a fountain. But there was this little summer house and we used to play in there. And they were in the last room, which had one of those round windows, what do you call them? And it had a seat round it with a...
Oh, yes. Like a conservatory.
No, we didn't. There is a conservatory there, but we didn't go into that in those days. But that's where we used to play in the little summer house, we used to call it, there in the corner. That's what we used to play in. And then of course she went away to school.
Hmm.
And I lost her and we came down here to live, and of course I had a friend next door living there until I was about 16.
Hmm. And you've lived here at number 50
ever since 1914, just before Christmas, I understand. Well, it must have been because I learnt the piano when we went back to school.
Mm.
And we bought the piano, I suppose it must have been after Christmas, just before I went to school, back to school. So, and I was 9 just after.
Mm. And what kind of a kid were you?
I don't know. My mother's not here to tell you.
Yeah. Did you get into trouble much?
Yes, plenty.
Well, what sort of things?
Piano music.
Yeah. You didn't appreciate the lessons?
Yes, I did, but I had one of those kind of teachers who believed in the stick.
Oh, right.
But we were fond of music.
Hmm. Hmm.
We had a very, very happy childhood. But we didn't go around like the children do now, wanting something bought for them or wanting to go in here and have a drink. We didn't know what those kind of things were. We used to sing round the washing up there and things of that nature.
How would you describe your family? What sort of a family did you come from?
Oh, I thought we were pretty good. Whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what sort of a man was your father?
My father was a very kind, generous man.
And how would you describe your mother?
she let us wriggle us around her little finger.
Yeah.
We were all spoiled.
In your family, who controlled the finances? Your mother or
My
your...
mother. The women did in those days. I think they still do, don't they?
What would happen? Your father would bring his pay packet.
Well, they had, everything was ours. Our house, our bedroom, our whatever, it was ours, both my mother and my father. I don't know what other people did, but I know that's the way they lived, both of them.
Did your mother work outside the home?
No.
And what did your father do on the railways?
He was a locomotive engine driver. He was on the mails. Mail trails. That's why we were in the country. Then, of course, he came here and he was still on the mails.
Did he like his work?
I didn't ask him.
But was he happy? Was he a happy man?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Were your parents politically active?
I don't know.
What about, were they religious?
Oh, yes. I mean, that didn't mean to say that they, like...
What religion, what denomination did they belong to?
They're both Catholics.
And did you go to Catholic school?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Round the corner, down in Golden Grove Street.
Um,
And then there was the St Mary's in Forbes Street round there, Newtown.
and what was the other one that you went to? There was St Mary's and...
No, we went to St Kieran's, Golden Grove,
Oh, yes.
and when they brought in secondary education, which education then wasn't as like it is, we were taught the three, reading, writing and arithmetics. Well, of course, then when we came to the senior school, well, they moved over then to St Mary's, the convent.
Oh, right.
And that's where and that's in Newtown, and the school was in Redfern in those days. I wouldn't know what that's in there today.
In your family, what was it? When would you have the main meal of the day?
Oh, well, on a Saturday, on a Saturday and Sunday, and on a Sunday it was in the middle of the day, and Dad sat up and carved the meal, and we used serviettes. We always used.
And for the main meal, like say during the week...
Well, I think we used to. Well, my father was like a shift worker, but we had our own. Well, we went to school. That's right. It'd be the night time.
And well, what would you have typically? What would be a typical meal at that time?
Well, a Sunday. I mean, that was a typical meal for everybody. A leg of lamb or pork or
A
leg of lamb and a boiled plum pudding. We had that, and I think everybody else had the same, because my father liked plum pudding, and we had plum pudding but we're very sorry for it now. We don't have plum pudding, and we all talk about Mama's plum pudding.
Yeah. What was your mother? How would you describe your mother's working day? What would be a typical day for your mother?
Well, my mother sewed, only for the family. And I think sometimes she'd sew till 1 and 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning if she had something on.
And what time would she get up in the morning?
She didn't like getting up in the morning, but she didn't. She got up in time to take us off to school. And my father used to get up at 5 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. She'd get up and get him a meal and go back to bed again.
Oh dear. Would you have cooked breakfasts in those days?
I don't remember that.
What would the family do for fun?
For what?
Fun. Would the family go on outings together as a family?
Oh yes, we used to go to the beach. My father had a Gladstone bag, about that long, about that wide, but about that tall.
Sorry.
And that was all packed up with food, and the strongest one carried the parcel. If you weren't carrying the bag, you were carrying the children. Because I'm 12 years older than my young brother, 10 years older than my young sister, and the other one I'm, well, about 6 3/4 older than her she is. So when we went out, there was always somebody to as I grew up. But even before, when we came to Sydney, we used to have family picnics at Bronte and places around. We used to have photos of them, but then I think I gave them back to what's left of one of the Chapman families.
And how would you get to where you were going? I mean, what sort of transport?
Oh, trams. Oh, we had plenty of trams. And it was better transport than it is now.
Really? Gosh.
We never had waiting line.
How did the First World War affect your family?
Well, we had a lot of cousins came here as soldiers, and I think they all came back again. There was one of Mother's cousins was killed after the war finished. You know, something happened. The war. But I think other than that, they all came back, all these cousins, some of them from Newcastle area, and they were my mother's relatives.
What can you remember about that wartime? What was the feeling here? What can you remember when war broke out, when you first found out?
Oh, that didn't worry me at 6 years of age.
Oh, right. And can you remember the impact on you?
No, I was 8 years old.
Can you remember how your family felt? Were they concerned?
No, I can't tell you that.
Can you remember the conscription campaigns of 19?
Oh, yes. I remember about it, but I wasn't interested in that. I never was. I've never been interested in those things myself.
So you didn't hear your parents talking about them? Or?
Well, they might have, but children were seen and not heard in my day.
Right. What about the flu epidemic of...
Oh, yes, that was terrible.
What can you remember of that?
Well, we had a cousin. His parents were in Cairns in Queensland, and both the mother and father had died. And they came down to Sydney. One girl was 16, and I think Stan was 8, and the other one was a bit younger. But there was another boy who stayed in Queensland. But Stan got pneumonia, and my mother had to take him to the children's hospital because there are no ambulances like there are now. She had to get a cab, and he was a big 8. And she took him one Sunday afternoon over to Camperdown Hospital, and the cab wouldn't go close to her, and she couldn't put him down. She had to carry him, and she's only a little thing. She's less than I am. So that was talked about a lot, about how she had to. That did a lot of. I think that was about the most outstanding thing of the. Oh, and we also had a dog at that time, and the sister, she had vaccination. Oh, I have vaccination on my arm now. She was vaccinated apparently in Queensland before she got down, and it was an awful thing. I can see that now, a red thing all up, and we had a dog, and Ella was a little baby. Mum used to put her in this pram out in the yard, and the dog used to mind her. Anyhow, Alice went to Ella, made a big fuss of her, and the dog grabbed her by the arm and took the top off this vaccination. Now that's another big thing those kind of things, I think, affected me more than the war did.
Mm.
Only that we had cousins come.
And was she okay in the end?
Oh yes, she got on all right, and so did Stan, but they're both dead now.
Yeah. When you in the home, what varieties of food were there available? Were they the same? What sort of varieties of fruit and veg were available at that time?
Well, fruit and vegetables was fruit in season, vegetables in season. You had cabbage and cauliflower in the winter time. You had peas and beans in the summertime. I don't think there weren't all those that they brought into the country of late years. Like, we've got a lot of varieties. I suppose there was spinach, but I don't ever remember us having spinach. I don't. Well, we had celery. Lettuce and tomato and celery and beetroot. They were the main things.
And was there much fruit?
Well, we had fruit in season. We didn't have oranges for 12 months of the year, and we didn't have apples for 12 months of the year. Mind you, they're not too hot. It's running the 12 months.
Yeah. Well, who were your friends when you were growing up here?
Well, I had the friend next door. Oh, and then the girls I went to school with too lived round in this area.
Right. Were there a lot of kids in the neighbourhood?
Oh, yes. They're not overcrowded, but there were children, plenty of children. We didn't have the park that we've got now, but we did have the park. It was in its rough state.
Was it vacant, was it?
No, it belonged to those houses in Warrnambool Avenue.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was their recreation area. The council just took that over as we came to Sydney. Well, it was a gate up here on Warrnambool Avenue, where those two posts are, and there was another gate round in Georgina Street. But of course they went, and finally the posts in Georgina Street have gone, which I think was a pity. And they've changed the name from Lower Avenue to Warrnambool. Well, now they had a monument to Warrnambool, but it's gone now, which nobody knew who Warrnambool was, but he ran a shop called Gillies, furniture place, and he was a very locally minded man, and I think he did a lot of good. Apparently, I didn't know him until he died. I knew there was Gillies up the street, but I didn't know him.
And that's Hollis Park across the road, isn't
They
it?
called it Hollis Park from the time I don't know who Hollis was. I haven't any idea.
Well, what sort of things would you do with your friends when you had time with your friends?
We'd talk, and I mean, if you play the piano. We hadn't, and we used to go now Doris and I our Saturday afternoon, we used to go for a walk. That's what we used to do of an afternoon. We didn't go to the pictures.
Right. Well, where would you walk to? How far were you free to go?
Oh, we were free to go all around the district. We used to go over to Erskineville, down to out to Redfern, down to Broadway. You know, just go for a walk on a Saturday afternoon. We did that for years.
Was it safe? Was it safe?
Oh, yes. We wouldn't have been let roam around the streets if it wasn't safe.
Did you ever have any adventures?
No, there are no adventures coming our way.
Okay. Were there places you were not allowed to go? Were there places you were not allowed to go? Where where your parents told you you're not to go there?
Well, we didn't go to places like that. We were young ladies, I'll have you know, ditch it all.
Okay.
We looked down our nose at the riff-raff.
Right. Well, what was the makeup of the? I mean, were there riff-raff in the area, or was it an affluent area or a working area?
It's a working area, and there were some very fine. A fellow asked me next door one day, what's the difference? I said they're a very fine crowd of people. There's some wonderful families here. There might have been an oddment that wasn't. And very proud people. They were very proud of the way they lived and went about. So we went, and when I was about 20, I worked in the city, and this fella, we're talking about I lived in Newtown. Oh, you live in the slums. Oh. And he was a horrible fellow too. His father was a manager of some place, and they lived at Mossman's, and he thought he was the king's pants. Oh, I didn't.
No. Well, was in the area? Was it industrial or residential?
Oh, it's industrial. The RXL jam factory was round the corner, and the industry that was, and of course the railway had their workshops down, the Everleigh workshops, which have all gone now. There are two places that I can think of, and like Keith always says, there was some place that used to smell beautiful on a morning, some mornings, and Keith always says that was cornflakes and was Kellogg's. I don't know that it was Kellogg's then, but Kellogg's might have taken it over, and that was in behind these big houses here across the road.
Were there people in the area that you were told to avoid?
Don't remember.
Okay.
Oh, I know there were some people we didn't mix with, but we said good morning and good afternoon. We were polite. But
And what was the problem with those people? What?
I wouldn't know. They just weren't your type, that's all.
Yes. Did you have books as a child?
Not like the children have anything like that. We might have had a book that went through from childhood to teenage. But when my sisters, they had more.
What about toys? Did you have toys?
I had. My father made toys. I had a big dresser he made for me. He made cradles, not for me, and dolls' beds. The sisters both had those kind of things. Yes, we had things, and my mother dressed them. When I had dolls, I always had the China doll. Always had a China doll. I had a fall once. I've got with a running with my doll, and I've got a mark on my knee still.
It broke.
Actually.
Thinking about the neighbourhood generally, where did most people do their shopping?
Well, along Newtown, my dear, Newtown was the shopping area of the Sydney.
Well, what was it like up there? What were the shops that were there?
It was everything, grocer shops and butcher shops, and I mean plural. There's nothing up there now, only restaurants, takeaway food, second-hand antiques they call them, places, and places that on bookshops, plenty of bookshops.
But when you were growing up, after around 1912, after you came here, there was a whole mix of shops there.
Yeah, of course there was. Dress shops and milliners, and you could go and buy anything you wanted along Newtown.
Can you remember, might have been in the 20s, Saks had a haberdashery or clothing store. They were a Jewish family.
What now?
Sachs.
Where-
SACHS.
Where were they? I don't know.
Up in Newtown.
Well, there was Brennan's.
Mm.
There was another place on the opposite side where Fleming's are now. That and a couple of other places. Sweets's.
Mm.
There was an arcade along there, and a man called Nat Lewis. I think he was the lace king.
Mm. Can you remember Cross's herbalism?
Yes, I did hang around that sort of place all my life till it went away.
Tell me about that.
Oh, well, it was only the window and the smell of it. It had a peculiar smell. I could never make out. Oh, well, it was. I know what's the herbs, I suppose but it had I think, it was the place. Of course, the chemists used to have with a light in the window. You know, some kind of thing with a light in the window. I think.
Were you ever treated by Mr. Cross?
Oh no. We didn't go in for that kind of thing. We had a doctor.
What can you remember of common illnesses when you were growing up? What were the sort of illnesses that people got and were worried about?
Well, I think the only thing that hit us, it wasn't until my young brother. My young sister, at 10 years of age, had whooping cough, and she did have whooping cough. We used to run when we heard her, right up to we had to, because she'd choke. It's a terrible complaint. It really is. And not long after that she developed asthma, and she's had that all along. I think that it was just because she was worried, you know, about she got such a doing with the whooping cough. But then my young brother had a kidney complaint. He had his 11th birthday and Christmas in hospital. He had a bad throat.
Mm.
And Mother had the doctor to him, and he had to stay in bed, which he did stay in. Anyhow, it was 8-hour day. That was in the first week in October, it used to be held in. And he was getting over it. He wasn't the best, but he was one of these children that always had to be on the go. So he went out with his two friends to Manly, and there was a canoe. And he got into the canoe, it had upset with him, and he had those wet clothes on him until he got home. We didn't know till afterwards. And of course, straight away, he had the kidney complaint. He was in hospital all those weeks there, from 8-hour day, about a week after, until New Year's Day.
It's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. And
What were hospitals like then? Can you remember? I mean, did you go and visit him every day, or?
oh no, you only had visiting. Hospitals only had visiting hours, and you only went in the visiting hours. You daren't. I mean, if you went there in non-visiting hours, and that was only 1 or 2 days a week. If you went there, you'd be put out. It wouldn't be any those old ward sisters. Ward sisters, and that's it.
Really? Did you ever get hospitalised?
I had my not when I was a child. It's a bit older.
Mm.
No. But that's the only two. At childhood, that was enough anyhow in our family.
Can you remember in the area if there was any crime or around at all? Like even SP booking or?
Oh, well, there was, but I mean that was under the lap.
People didn't generally consider that to be a crime, did they?
I don't know. We weren't interested. We didn't have enough money for that. Anyhow, there was money for other things.
Mm. In the evening, what would the family do in the evening when they were relaxing after a hard day's work?
Well, you'd go to bed. You wouldn't be here. Mum would be there till Monday night I used to iron. I did that practically all my life.
Is that because on Monday in the day you did the washing?
Yeah. No, you'd sit there, I did that practically. Well, I did a couple of hours of it, or an hour of it. Then my mother used to take over. She'd had a rest then, and she used to take over. And everything had to be ironed. Pillow slips and sheets and for your frocks and your shirts, and they were ironed. They weren't like we go plonk plonk and they're done.
And you would have had those heavy irons.
No, we didn't have. We had the ones that you clip the handle on.
Oh, right.
Put them on the fuel stove.
Right.
We had a fuel stove out in there. No, we didn't have heavy irons. I don't think my mother could use a heavy iron. We did have those with a handle, a couple of them there with the, but they weren't heavy irons.
I'm just about out of tape. What can you remember of the big events of the day when you were growing up? What were the big occasions?
I don't know. We had Christmas Day. We had New Year's Day. We always had we had poultry for Christmas.
And was that rare?
Oh yes, not like it is today. And there was Easter.
Did you have Easter eggs?
No, bunnies and all those things were only come out of the place.
Oh. Did you ever get involved in maypole dancing? Were you ever involved where there's a big mass display?
No, we weren't, not at our school. But when my sisters came along, they had a lot of eurythmics and all those kind of things that we never had anything like that.
Right. What about, can you remember ever celebrating Wattle Day or Arbor Day?
No.
Well, what about Empire Day, Cracker Night?
Oh, we had crackers. We had crackers. I forgot about cracker night such a long time ago that nobody has crackers now.
Yeah. What would you do on Cracker Night?
Well, we used to have we used to have crackers, more than we should have had really. And we used to, I think, go over in the park and let them all off. That's what the people used to do.
Did the people in the neighbourhood build a bonfire or?
Oh, no.
No?
No.
Oh.
No bonfire. There were later on in life, a couple of times they made a bonfire, but not in.
What was your school experience like? I mean, did you like going to school?
Oh yes.
What subjects did you do?
Reading, writing and arithmetic. We learned, we had our Shakespeare and so forth, but you didn't have these science and all those things. They're only later a date.
How old were you when you left school?
About 16, I think.
Did most kids go to school to 16?
Not most of them. Quite a lot of them left at 14. But I think I was 16.
Was there a place in the area that had that was a social focus where people would talk and gather together?
Only round at the school, to the church gatherings. We used to have plenty of those. And see that was all churches had their gatherings.
And they have like social events as well as religious services.
Yes, there was always the Friendly Society and what else there was. And they used to run their fetes and what have you.
Where would they be held, the fetes?
Well, ours were held round at the school.
Right.
And it's in the Church of England were held up at St Stephen's.
And when you say friendly societies, were they parts of the church organisation, and would they help with pharmaceutical costs and things like that? You know, like, or like a savings thing, you can put money there and then...
No, not that I know of. There could have been, but I don't know of anything like that.
So when you mention friendly societies, you're not talking about that?
No, they were only... Now, what do they call it in the Church of England? Well, I mean, that wasn't anything to do with finance.
Oh, right.
Only any finance that came into it was to help the upkeep of the church.
Yeah.
Or school. In our case, it was upkeep of the school.
Hmm. What were the most popular newspapers in your house?
Well, they used to keep the Labour Daily once, and the Herald. Herald went on for off and on for up until they were 15, and we couldn't read them. I think they were 15 cents, and the people, half the time, they wouldn't deliver our papers, and we cut it out. But we did take it on again, and we get them a Mirror.
Mm. When you were a kid, were there any magazines, like the Women's Weekly or something like that, magazines that your family would get?
No. I don't know that there were any. There might have been those English ones, but there was nothing. And there was... Now, there was... the boys' own annuals, but I think they... And the girls' own annuals, like that. But I think they were not local. I think they were English. They could have been. And then there was True Confessions and all that for the teenagers. There were a couple of magazines, and I don't even know whether they were local or otherwise.
Is that when in the 19-teens, when you were growing up?
Yeah.
What about comics? Were there comics?
I don't think so. We didn't have any if there were.
Can you remember any of the popular songs of the time?
Well, I'm for Blowing in Bubbles.
Oh, right.
One of them. Offhand, it's a bit hard to find it.
And what about tricks that kids would... Were there any particular favourite tricks or jokes that kids would do at that time?
Oh, I don't know. We used to play hopscotch and a few other things like that.
Mm. Can you remember what the games were?
Rounders. We used to play at school, rounders. That's the only thing. And hopscotch. We didn't have much room to play.
Did you ever go to the movies, you know, the silent movies?
Oh, I think I have been, but not as a... See, some people went every Saturday, took their threepence and went every Saturday afternoon. We didn't do that.
Where would they go locally?
Well, there was a place up the top of the street. It was a second-hand furniture place, and it's now closed. But that was called the Trocadero, I think. It's up there in King Street.
Yes. And that was around when you were growing up?
Yeah, that was there long before we came to Sydney. I don't know what it was originally, but I went in there one day. I was looking for something or other that I didn't see what I wanted, and I didn't think they were worthwhile. That I didn't have the fidelity. And the ceiling is beautiful ceiling round in there. I don't know what else it's like there, but it's been cleaned out. So what they're going to do with it, I don't know.
Can you remember any local characters? People who are a bit eccentric or just that stand out in your memory from that time?
No, I can't remember anything. The only ones I know of were later on in life, not when I was very young. If there were, I didn't know anything about them.
Was your childhood happy?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What's your... Sorry.
And we weren't always looking for something.
Mm.
And bored. The children are bored now. They've got everything.
Mm.
I didn't know what bored was until I was an adult.
Well, what's your happiest memory?
I think they were all pretty happy.
Well, what about your saddest memory?
I never had any sad memories. My sad memory was when I was an adult.
Mm.
I don't think I had any. We a couple of times there were girls at school. One was, we thought that was terribly sad. She was killed. She just lived round the corner here, and she went to run over to some of the children on the other side of the street. She lived on this side of the street, and she ran under a truck.
Mm.
We all went round to see her dead.
Really?
She was laid out in a coffin at home.
Mm.
And now, Ella had a couple of experiences, but still, that was not me, was it?
Who? Sorry.
My sister,
Oh, yes.
Ella, had and so does Sheila. But I can't ever remember.
Mm.
That's the only thing, and that really, the girl that was killed, well, she was a lot younger than I was, but she was in between my sisters and myself.
What smells do you associate with Newtown at that time?
The botany boiling down.
The what?
When the botany boiling down. When the wind blew.
There was a big, I think there were tanneries out that way
Yes,
as well.
that was the tannery, and we used to call it botany.
Ah.
And the IXL jam factory, when they were making tomato sauce. It was beautiful.
As long as they weren't around at the same time. And what sounds do you associate with the area from then?
Well, we had the trains, and when anything special was on, they used to cock-a-doodle-doo. That's the steam trains. And you could always hear them blowing off steam and what have you. But there's nothing now, only sometimes early in the morning, if I wake, it's too cold to wake up now, but in the summertime you can hear the train starting about 5 o'clock in the morning, going like hell and be happy. But the dear old steam trains, they were gorgeous really. You used to get cinders in your eyes and what have you.
Well, how aware of you as a child were you of the world outside your local area?
Can't remember.
So you were really focused here in Newtown?
No, I don't know whether we were or not, but I can't remember anything.
Okay.
We did. Yeah, we had papers, and things were happening, but a lot of them were, as I say, little girls are seen but not heard, and therefore you went on with what you're doing.
Right. Did you get any sex education?
No, golly, what's that?
Just asking.
That's a silly question, demands a silly answer.
Not even from your mother?
Oh dear, no, you learn by, well, what will I say?
Well, what happened when you started to
They
menstruate?
didn't talk about them. My sisters and my parents talked more about things than my mother did with me. Those things were out of bounds, I think. I don't know how you...
Yeah. Well, what happened when you started to menstruate? Did you know what was going on?
I certainly did. We certainly weren't notified of it.
Yeah.
We're supposed to know.
Pardon?
We were supposed to know.
You're just supposed to know.
Oh, yeah. As my mother said, we were pulling her up once, criticising the way she read her family. And she was really hurt. And she said, well, all we were taught when we were no psychology and so forth. Well, I thought there's no psychology with me. We only had reading, writing, arithmetic, and read our Shakespeare, etc. She said we weren't taught anything at all about growing up. Only that when you grow up, you marry and you have a family. That's what kept the world going round. She said we weren't taught why or how or when, but we soon found out.
I can't think of any more questions. Have you got anything that you particularly want to say? Any special memories that you have from that time?
Anyway, my sister and I have talked a bit about. Well, we were a happy family, I'm sure. And we made a lot of fun between ourselves. It was cheap fun, but we made a lot of fun.
Like what sort of things? What kind of fun? What would you do?
I wouldn't know. No, that's too much to ask me now.
Yeah. Can you remember your father ever coming back and talking about industrial accidents and people being injured at work?
He went on and talked about industrial things. No, because I don't like them. He talked about those kind of things and talked. Anyhow, he was very right. He wasn't an I won't worker or anything like that. Now, I'll tell you one thing that happened to my father. When he joined up the railway, they were promised, there was nothing down in writing on it, they were promised then that for every year of service, it would have been, when my father retired, he would have got £900. Well, he knew before he retired that he wasn't getting that 900 because the ones earlier on that didn't have his years of service didn't get it and tried. Well, that, in my opinion, is why we've got so much with unions today. They've gone now to one extreme, and there was the working man was kicked in the pants, and children were put in mines, and all those kind of things. I do think that history tells us that.
Were kids at that time expected to work? Were you expected to have a job or contribute to the family in any way?
Well, we weren't. My father didn't expect us to, but a lot of the children did.
What sort of things would they do?
Oh, sell papers and go messages for the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, or go out on the milkman's run, and well, I did that up until just recently. Go out on the milkman boy that I worked with before I left work. He used to deliver milk here every morning, back in those days.
Was it a hard life then?
I think there were a lot of happy people. People didn't go around with long faces.
Was there much sense of community in the area?
Well, I think there was, because everybody knew everybody. I know nobody now. I know the next door, and I know the woman on the bottom of the street. Oh, and I came down the street tonight, for which I was very happy, with the lady that lives up in 38, the cottage up there. She picked up her little girl and was coming home. She was loaded up too. And she's got a car, I don't know why. And anyhow, I was very happy. I said, well, look, you better go on. I said, I'm slow. Well, she said, I can be slow too. And she's been up there. Let's see, Mrs. Belton's been dead. She's been dead 10 years. Or near about. No, she hasn't been dead. Anyhow, she's been dead a few years, and she wasn't here for a few years. And that one there has been living up this. She bought the house from. And
Okay.
And I think that's the only time that I've ever had one of the only times I've ever had a conversation with her.
Gee. That's changed a lot. It's much more mobile now, do you think?
No, I don't think it's changed, but no, and the people I say, well, I haven't been out on the front of lately. I used to go and I knew a lot of people, but the people that come in, they'd have their cars in the front, and you'd say good morning to them. You just get used to them, and they never stay more than 6-12 months. The people in most of the places are up the street.
It's not very long, is it?
No, see, the people who own. I don't think there are many people who own their houses.
Right. Yeah.
And they come here down. I don't know, they don't seem to be there very long. You see different cars, so, and different people.
Okay, well, look, I've run out of questions, and I'd like to thank you for the
When are
evening.
you going to get home and get your tea?
In an hour or so. Appreciate your time.
All right.
It's great. Thank you.
Now I better go.